Hello friends, it looks like one of Ubisoft's new Assassin's Creed game is being playtested right now, and apparently things are not going well. We're talking about Assassin's Creed Codename Invictus, which isn't a mainline Assassin's Creed game and more of an experiment from Ubisoft, where they're trying to push the franchise into a completely different genre. Invictus is supposed to be a PvP multiplayer game developed by a team of veterans who did For Honor. And from what we've heard so far, it has a structure similar to Fall Guys. Basically, players compete with each other, get knocked out round by round, and try to survive until the end. The good news is that apparently the game doesn't actually look anything like Fall Guys. It looks much more like a normal Assassin's Creed game, just with players picking familiar characters and fighting in arenas based on iconic locations. The bad news is that according to Insider Gaming, people who have taken part in playtests have been reaching out and saying the game is pretty awful. And because these playtests have gone so badly, there is now speculation that Invictus could end up being significantly delayed. And honestly, that might be the best thing Ubisoft can do here. Because of all the leaks, it really doesn't sound like Ubisoft has fully figured out what this game is supposed to actually be. Yes, we know it's a PvP, but that can mean a lot of different things. Is it meant to be casual? Is it hero-based? Is it more like an extraction game? We have no idea. But whatever it is right now, it clearly isn't working. And that's the biggest problem. Ubisoft needs to decide what kind of game they're making, and more importantly, who they're making it for. Look at For Honor, for example. That game was clearly a niche one, but it had a clear identity. Directional melee combat, factions, character mastery, and very specific fantasy. You knew exactly what that game was. And because of that, it is still around almost 10 years later. Even celebrated their anniversary with a new roadmap recently. Assassin's Creed is obviously a much bigger and more recognizable franchise, but that alone isn't enough, especially when the audience has mostly supported big single-player experiences, not multiplayer spin-offs. And I don't even think the experiment itself is the issue. I actually like that they're trying different things, but if the core idea isn't strong enough, then throwing Ezio, iconic locations, and the Assassin's Creed name on top of it isn't going to save it. At this point, Ubisoft either needs to delay it and seriously rethink the whole thing, or they may as well cancel it before it turns into another expensive flop. Arc Raiders is still pulling in thousands and thousands of players every day, but with every major update, the mood around the game seems to be getting worse, so the honeymoon period might already be over. The latest big update, Riven Tides, brought in a lot of stuff. A new map, a new condition, the arc turbine enemy, new items, and a bunch of other additions. On paper, all of that sounds great, but the problem is the update also changed weapon durability, pushed players more toward PvP, and heavily nerfed the photoelectric cloak. And those changes didn't go well with their audience. After the update was released, players started leaving negative reviews, and the recent Steam reviews dropped into mixed because of that. On top of all that, Arc Raiders has already been losing players since the start of 2026, and Riven Tides was supposed to be the big update that brought people back. And to be fair, Steam charts did show a small bump, but very quickly the game went right back to declining again. Now obviously Steam reviews and player counts don't show the entire picture, but Steam is still one of the game's biggest platforms, so it definitely matters. Embark did eventually walk back some of those more controversial changes, but by that point a lot of the damage had already been done. And this isn't the first time an update has caused this kind of reaction. It feels like after a really strong first few months, players are starting to get tired of big balance changes, especially the ones that mess with the parts of the game they already liked. But that's the risk with games like this. You can add new content, new enemies, new maps and new systems, but if the game suddenly feels less fair, more punishing, or less fun to play, players are going to react badly. And that seems to be exactly what's happening here. But I'm curious to hear what do you guys think about the latest updates, so let me know. It looks like another multiplayer shooter is already done for. Last Flag, the 5v5 online-only capture the flag shooter from Night Street Games, recently launched, and now the devs have already said they're stopping additional development after a disappointing release. And if you haven't heard about this one, there's actually an interesting name attached to it. The studio was co-created by Dan Reynolds, the frontman of Imagine Dragons, and the game launched in mid-April as a premium title, but with a pretty low price. And surprisingly, the Steam reviews were actually mostly positive, so the issue wasn't that people hated the game, the issue was that barely anyone showed up. According to Steam charts, Last Flag peaked at just over 500 players, and almost immediately after that, most of them left, with concurrent player count dropping to around 50. That led Mac Reynolds, Dan's brother, to post on Discord and tell players that the team probably won't be able to support much additional development beyond a few upcoming patches. Now, the game isn't shutting down just yet. They still plan to release a new character, a new game mode, cosmetics and leaderboards, but that feels like a Hail Mary, and I really don't think it's going to change much. So it looks like another game bites the dust in the multiplayer shooter genre. And honestly, I'm not surprised. First of all, Capture the Flag is a recognizable mode, sure, but as a main hook for an entire game, I mean, that's a tough sell. It is a pretty niche mode, and it usually works best as one part of a bigger multiplayer package, not necessarily the whole thing. Secondly, multiplayer games live or die based on population. You can have a solid game, good reviews and a decent idea, but if nobody is playing, the whole thing falls apart. And thirdly, launching as a paid multiplayer shooter in today's market is extremely risky. Even with a low price and no extra monetization, you're still asking people to pay for a game with no established community, no proven track record, and no guarantee that matchmaking will even stay healthy. Meanwhile, players have endless free-to-play options already fighting for their time. This is a brutal market to enter. I do feel bad for the developers though, because clearly they put work into this, and it shows. But with a game like this, you can't just launch and hope for the best. I think they probably needed more public playtests and maybe even an open beta, and most importantly, a much stronger proof of concept before asking people to pay. Bigger games have tried this and failed. Unfortunately, Last Flag seems to have learned that lesson the hard way. Aside from the new 007 game, IO Interactive is also working on something completely different, and it is called Project Fantasy. This is a brand new IP from the Hitman developer, and it is supposed to be an online fantasy RPG built to grow over many years. According to a recent interview with the Game Business, IOI CEO said the project is backed by an undisclosed financial partner, and the game is apparently in a very safe place right now. There's even been some speculation that the partner might be Xbox, but the CEO hasn't confirmed that, unfortunately. What we do know is that the studio says it's already very far into development, so once 007 First Light ships, attention is expected to shift more toward Project Fantasy. And look, IO Interactive has a strong track record. The Hitman games are great and there is already a lot of excitement around 007. But an online fantasy RPG? This is a massive swing that could easily miss. This is one of the hardest spaces in gaming to break into. Players already have huge online games taking up their time with years of content and massive communities. So Project Fantasy isn't just competing for money, it is competing for said time, and that's much harder. Now, I'm not saying they shouldn't try. A new fantasy RPG absolutely can work, but it needs a very clear identity, strong gameplay, big reason for players to show up at launch, and more importantly, a reason for them to keep coming back. And right now, we just don't know enough to say whether it has that. Also, online games tend to go through the budget like a hot knife through butter, so for their own sake, I hope that this partner of theirs has deep pockets for a game like this. But still, hopefully we'll see more of Project Fantasy soon, because otherwise there is a risk it becomes another one of those big online games that gets announced, then disappears for years and ends up in the same weird limbo as Riot's MMO. Speaking of upcoming games, Metro 2039 recently hit a pretty impressive milestone. The game has apparently passed 1 million wishlists only 2 weeks after being announced. 4A Games celebrated the milestone on social media and thanked fans for the support, and also used this moment to confirm that the game is still planned to release this winter. And honestly, that's a really strong number for Metro. I love this franchise, but to be fair, Metro isn't exactly a casual IP. It's darker, slower, more atmospheric, and definitely not built for everyone. The previous game selling over 10 million copies clearly helped though, and this milestone shows that there are still a lot of people who want more Metro. And honestly, it is refreshing to see a shooter that isn't chasing multiplayer trends. No battle passes, no seasonal grind, no live service roadmap being thrown at your face. Just a good old single player shooter, and that alone probably makes it stand out right now. That said, I do think some players are still waiting to see more gameplay before fully buying in. Wishlists are great, but they don't automatically turn into sales. The real test will be gameplay, performance, reviews, and whether 4A can prove that this is the Metro game people have been waiting for. So the interest is definitely there, now they just have to deliver. Also, quick thing. If you don't know who I am, my name is Alex, I'm a game producer and I'm here to help you get caught up on everything that's going on in the video game industry. Back in 2023, Naughty Dog officially cancelled The Last of Us Online, and for a while that seems to be the end of the story, but now some fans are trying to bring it back. According to Insider Gaming, a longtime fan named Christopher McCabe started a Change.org petition asking Naughty Dog to revive the cancelled multiplayer project. And his argument is pretty simple. There are still thousands of players who love the original Factions multiplayer mode from The Last of Us and The Last of Us Remastered. And for years fans wanted either a proper sequel, a patch for the newer games, or a live service project handled by a separate team. McCabe says Naughty Dog made a promise to fans in 2020, then broke that promise in 2023 when the game was cancelled. So now he's asking Naughty Dog, Sony, PlayStation and everyone involved to fulfill that promise and finally release the next chapter of Factions Online. Which is a noble pursuit, but at the time of recording this, the petition had a little over 2,000 signatures, which clearly isn't massive. But it does show that some fans still care about this. Now, do I think Naughty Dog will actually listen? Well, probably not. And the reason is pretty simple. This petition shows there's still demand, but it doesn't solve the reason the game was cancelled in the first place. Naughty Dog said at the time that the scope of this project would require years of post-launch support, and that would have affected the single-player games they're known for. That's the part people sometimes ignore. We love Naughty Dog because they make great single-player games. The Last of Us Online would have pushed them into becoming a live service studio, or at least forced them to dedicate a huge amount of resources to live service support, and I don't think that's what most fans actually want from them. The petition is basically asking Naughty Dog to do both, make huge single-player games and support a major online game at the same time. But with the industry being where it is right now, that just doesn't seem realistic. And yeah, technically 2,000 signatures is still thousands of fans, but I don't think that number is strong enough to convince Sony or Naughty Dog to bring the project back. Don't get me wrong, I would love to play another game in this universe, but personally I would rather see Naughty Dog focus on making another great single-player game than risk a massive budget on a multiplayer project that may or may not survive. But hey, I'm curious, would you rather Naughty Dog bring back Factions, or should they just stick with what they do best? And that's everything I have for you guys today. Let me know what do you think about a potential multiplayer Assassin's Creed. What are your thoughts on the recent Arc Raiders updates? And if you're looking forward to a new IP from IO Interactive. As usual, if you want to know more, all links are down below. And of course, clicking the like button helps this channel a lot and I personally highly appreciate it. Thank you for making it this far. And with that, Alex is signing off for today. Cheers!